started, right? So I think most of you know me. I'm Debbie Eggleston, and I am filling in for Allie, who is not able to join us today. But you see, Sam is here, so that's wonderful. He's kind of filling in for her. So we have Shauna Nordling, who is going to give us information about IEPs and 504 plans. And I think, some other school-related information and answer questions that we have. And she has worked with Sam before, and it's really nice, I think, especially because you are aware of some things related to FSHD specifically. So I think that is very helpful. So we are very glad to have you join us, and really appreciate the information that you're going to give us. So
yeah.
Thank you, Shauna.
I'm honored to have been asked by Allie to be able to join you guys and make this presentation. I'm gonna, let's see, hopefully share my screen here. See what I have. Well, maybe.
Is it allowing you to do it?
So fun fact, I just got a brand new computer because my other got wiped. So if you don't mind, if I can share my presentation with you, and then you put it up, is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to email me, I can go ahead and do that.
Okay, I can do that. So
while you're doing that, would it be helpful if maybe we kind of introduce ourselves and sort of mentioned what made us interested in this particular topic, and if that would maybe help you get an idea of, okay. So Jessica, are you interested in just kind of giving a little scoop?
Sure. My daughter is 16 and was currently just diagnosed with FSHD at Mayo.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you could join us. So I'll just mention, because we haven't met, I don't think, I have a daughter who is 14, and she was diagnosed exactly a year ago. And this topic is really important to me because she just started high school and has had, it's a new school. We've been there with her previous school for 9 years. And so it's, a new building facility, and just everything is so different. So we're learning about that, but then also learning how to manage to allow her to do the things she needs to do while having a progressive condition. So for example, she just fell for the first time this year. And so I've had a lot of school related questions. I'm so happy Shauna's here. So I don't know if Marissa or Amy or John, if you want to give a little scoop.
Sure. Hi, I'm Marissa. I'm 27. I don't have any kids, but I have FSHD myself. And I was on a parents roundtable panel a couple of in December where we were talking about this topic. So I figured I'd pop in and see what people had to say and give my thoughts if they were wanted. Yeah.
Shauna, I haven't received a message. Did it go through to me?
It just shut off.
Okay.
So let's see.
Well, I can just say a quick hello. I'm apologize in advance. I can't stay for very long this evening, but I'm June with the FSHD Society, and the parents group is near and dear to my heart. And we have, so I just want to, put a face to the name. I'm a resource for all of you if you have any questions or want to get connected to people or resources or anything at all. And Anna, I think, can't be here tonight, Anna Gilmore, but she's our FSHD navigator, and she's really ramping up to become like a one-stop shop for questions that for all things related to FSHD, coping with FSHD. So I just wanted to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. And I just posted in the chat a brochure or booklet that we produced a number of years ago called the Guide for Schools, which is something that might be helpful to hand out to people in schools that you might be working with to explain what FSHD and what sort of accommodations might be appropriate for students who have FSHD. So that's me.
Awesome. Debbie, were you able to get it at least?
Yes, and I'm having my computer engineering husband help me get this because it came to me in a way that I'm not used to. So I'm really sorry about this.
That's
See,
okay.
if Allie were here, we'd be starting already. So I'm
No,
sorry.
no worries. Well, I can give just a little bit of background before while we wait. So my name is Shauna Nordling, and I am currently a counselor, a high school counselor. But I went to school at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, and I received my special education and elementary education bachelor's. But found just a love with working with students with different abilities, and really that started when I was in middle school, and I babysat for a family that had a child with autism. And I was a parapro for a number of years while I was also in school. I also received my master's from Northern Arizona University. So I've been in special education just kind of as a resource teacher, as a autism inclusion teacher, a K through 12 special education teacher, a behavior specialist, but all of that falls under the realm of special education. There we go. All right. So I think we're on the second slide right now. Awesome. Awesome. I am a wife, a mom of 3, ranging from 16 to 12. And then I love traveling, hiking. Most of my kids, my girls are involved in rodeos. My son rides dirt bikes and races across the state, so we travel a lot with that. And then my kids are also involved in our local 4-H for the county. I also am a mom with my daughter. She has epilepsy, and she has epilepsy like I had epilepsy when I was in high school. And it looks different for everybody. And it's not to kind of compare what you guys go through at all. But I just wanted you to know that I understand the mom side of it all, and just the warrior piece that you guys do, and know that I understand the pushing through and wanting your kid to do everything that that everybody else does, and even though on the outside it looks perfect, it's not always, and everybody kind of has their own struggles and they're going through their own things. So this is my oldest. Her name is Bella, and the 2 pictures that that are in there is her being the captain of our cheer squad, and then her last year competing and earning the buckle for roping on her horse. And life looks different and modifications look different depending on how her health is. But I'm super proud that she continues to push through and do everything that she can. So, yeah. So I put this in here just to kind of start with, because, we're going to be talking about 504s and IEPs. Sometimes parents and people, there's just a lot of heated and passion when it comes to what everybody needs and wants. And this picture really just defines what the purpose is for both the 504s and the IEPs, and what works for one student is not going to work for the other. And so we really just need to keep in mind, like, what does your child need? What are the things that your child needs? So we're going to go over what a 504 is and what kind of supports that 504 can give, and then what kind of support the IEP can give. So this is just a kind of a bare bones of what an IEP and a 504 is. In the middle is the legal documents. So whether you're asking for a 504 or an IEP, at some point there needs to have some sort of medical diagnosis, but to know that both of these plans are legal documents. So know that if you have a 504 or you have an IEP and it's not being used in the way that it was written, you have a legal right as a parent to make those questions. And if those questions aren't being asked and things aren't being, they're not being used and they're not being effective, then you have a legal right to do that. And every year when you have a meeting, whether it's a 504 meeting or an IEP meeting, you receive parental rights. So it depends on if it's a 504 or an IEP, depends on how big your legal right packet will be. But you should be and legally are obligated to be offered that parental rights. If you don't get your rights, please let Allie know, and I will send Allie the link for the national rights of parents, so that way you guys have that too. But it honestly, if you just Google legal rights for parents for IEP or 504, it should come up too. So none of this should cost you anything. If you're at a school and they say, well, we need this, we need that, then you need to look up your legal rights again, because none of this should cost you anything. So the 504 is really any disability. It can follow you through life, and it has different forms and different things depending on the state. But the bare bones is, does your child have a disability? And you're on this Zoom because they do. They have a physical and medical disability that you have the paperwork for. The IEP is one or more disabilities, and IEP is a little bit more strict when it comes to qualifying categories. And we'll kind of go over that because, you might have another child who might fall into those categories. They provide accommodations or modifications to the curriculum or environment, depending on what their needs are. The IEP only follows through the end of the school. And then there's a ton of strict laws and rules that we need to follow. All right. All right. So if you want to click on that link, the rehab, the 504, is it not working? That's okay. So I will have this link as well. But the 504, the base of it came from the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And this will carry your child through life. This will carry your child through discrimination of employment, of any sort of services, any sort of thing. It's actually really interesting. I was looking at it. I mean, some of the qualifying categories is even alcoholism, but cancer and pregnancy. So really just anything that you could be discriminated against, it will follow you. When you have a student who graduates high school, and wants to continue on with their education into college, that IEP will turn into a 504 at the university level, at the college level. Okay. So just a little bit more, the 504s, any disability, any sort of disability that you have a medical diagnosis. And honestly, we as a school district like to have a doctor's medical diagnosis on file, just because it kind of covers our own selves when it comes to the 504, because the state also looks at what we're qualifying students for. And so we want to make sure that it's very tight, and we have an explanation, but we qualify students for ADHD who don't have a medical diagnosis of ADHD or behavioral disorders, and don't have that, just because we know that they have this, or we know that they have this need, and the parent came to the meeting, and as a team, we decided, yes, this child needs this accommodation. So the 504, one of the biggest kind of differences is accommodations. So the 504 can accommodate the environment, but not the curriculum. And what that means is whether it's like extra testing time, or being able to turn in an assignment a day or two late, being able to use a computer instead of handwriting. All of these are environmental accommodations. You're not changing the assignments. You're not changing the expectation or the grade. You're just changing the environment to help support that student. And then as far as, like I said earlier, following throughout school, and then also beyond in the employment and university level. I think for a lot of your students and a lot of your kids, if they are recently just diagnosed, a 504 is very appropriate. They might just need a few things, or being able to get out of class. If they're at the high school level, or they're switching classes for different things, being able to leave class 2 to 3 minutes early, so that way they are not in congested hallways, and they're able to go to their next class in a safe manner. That's a very appropriate 504 accommodation. It doesn't change the curriculum. It doesn't have certain goals. They just need extra support physically with that. So that's what a 504 is. It doesn't have to be updated every year. Legally, it doesn't. Most school districts like for it to be updated every year. But unlike the IEP, it's a little looser when it comes to what time of year it gets updated. Okay. All right. So these are the IEP categories. It might be labeled differently depending on the state, depending on the district. But these are the 13 qualifying categories that IDEA deems IEP driven. The biggest that you guys will probably be looking at is maybe orthopedic impairments, or OHI, which is other health impairment. So that's what we in our district kind of worked with when it came to that. Sam, do you mind if I talk just a little bit about kind of some things on like qualifying category and accommodations?
Certainly fine. even to so yeah, totally fine.
Okay, thanks, Bud. So when Sam came to the Vail School District, he was, you were a freshman, right? You were going into freshman year? Okay. So he was going into freshman year, and his qualifying category was other health impairment. And so we kind of, other health impairment tends to be an umbrella disability that goes with a lot of different medical diagnoses that might not fit into some of the other ones. Okay. All right. So IEPs. So one or more of the 13 disabilities listed in IDEA. Goals and data. So this is also different. So Sam came with an IEP, and Sam came with a qualifying category for other health impairment. But when we were looking at, goals, Sam was on it, and he was awesome. And when we were looking at, academic goals, the biggest goal that we had really was just getting things turned in when he first started. But it wasn't for lack of his hard work, because Sam was a really hard worker. And Sam was able to get everything turned in on time. And so that just really kind of depends on your student as well, and what that looks like. So let's see. Sorry, I did something here. There we go. For the IEP, it is by law a need to have the meeting every year, and every year the day before your last meeting. So if you met October 13th, 2022, your meeting will be at least October 12th, 2023. That is your legal right as a parent, and it is the law to have that. So if you don't have that meeting, it's important, and you guys have a legal right to do that. It's also about the relationship that you have with your special education teacher as well. And some schools and some districts require that IEP case managers have the IEP done and ready. Some are sent to you to look at before the meeting, so you can kind of review it. Some have that meeting at that time. It is really just up to the school and the preference. And you guys, if you as a parent say, I would really like the IEP ahead of time so I can see what you guys are thinking, you have that right. So know that, but also know that depending on how your district works, it might put some strain on a relationship with the special education teacher. So it's that fine line of what your rights are and what your relationship is, and keeping that line of communication open. So IEP, every IEP has to have goals, and they have to have something that they are working for. Every quarter, you will get data on the students and updates on how they're doing. Every IEP will have accommodations, sometimes modifications, and we'll go over the difference, because to be frank, sometimes 20-year teachers don't know the difference between an accommodation and a modification. So I want you guys to know that as well. The MET is with the MET meeting is with the school psychologist. You guys will have a MET initially when you when you first request an IEP. It's called the Met One, and then the team will be there. The team, and I will kind of go on that with the next one, but every 3 years. So you have your yearly IEP meeting, and then every 3 years you have a Met meeting. And that's just to go over your qualifying category to see if it's still appropriate and go from there. So the IEP stops either the day of graduation or the day before your student turns 21. So that is the law as well. You have a right as a parent to have your students there until the day before their 21st birthday, if you think that it's appropriate. A lot of time. Sam, could you imagine being here until you were 21?
Really remember having the Met. Was that the TT and the OT that would come to the school and
So
ask me about accommodations, or was that something separate?
maybe I want to say that we had your Met your last year at Vail Academy before you transferred over.
Okay.
And I want to say that we had your Mets during Zoom because that was when COVID hit. And so it was online, and yeah, it was right before you transferred over. But that was when the school psychologist was there, and he's a real nice guy. And a couple of your teachers were there. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
And I think it was about 4 months after your surgery. It was when you were still kind of recuperating from your surgery, from your back surgery.
Probably why I don't remember it then. Yeah.
You had some other things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. So the IEP process. So if we're talking about the initial METs, if the initial IEP, you don't have an IEP, you want an IEP, this is the process. The school psychologist will reach out to you and set up a Met One meeting. And what that Met One meeting is you have the parents, especially at the high school level. We love to have the student because the student is the one that knows exactly what they need and don't need at the school level. The school psychologist, sometimes administrators are there. You as a parent have every right to invite anybody that you want, whether it's the doctor, whether it's an advocate, whether it's your sister-in-law who's also a special education teacher. You have that right. Services, so sometimes whether it's the orthopedic or OT, whether it's speech, depending on the different needs that your student has, all the different services will be there if they need them. At the high school level, the transition specialist or someone in the transition area can be there, because that's a big piece of high school is, all right, let's start looking about what we're doing afterwards. So then the Met 2, this is the determination. So Met 1, we have collected a lot of data. We are looking at what the qualifying category could be. We're looking at what kind of data we need for that, whether it's IQ testing, behavior rating testing, doctor's notes. For 99% of you, it will be all of the doctor's information and notes. You might need a IQ test, and kind of just like IQ, but then also the academic piece of where your student is based on the grade level, because we might be looking at a learning disability as well. So we've collected all that information from the MET 1. MET 2 is here's all the information that we are presenting, information from the IQ test, information from the academic testing. Does the team agree as a whole, all the people on that list right there, as a whole, does your team agree to an IEP and what's qualifying category? So once that happens, then the IEP meeting starts either the same day or a different day. And then that is just, what does your student need? What accommodations, what modifications? At some point, Sam, I know we put in like being able to use the staff bathroom because it was bigger. But then at Vail Academy, the doors were heavier. So we put in work orders for Sam to be able to open up the office doors. He was able to open up the classroom doors just fine, but the office doors needed some adjustment.
Yes, I remember they loosened the arm connected to the door to make it easier to open. Because I remember they said they couldn't put a button in because the wall was glass,
Mhm.
so they really know where to put it.
Yep.
But I remember they're really good about bringing me around to a lot of the doors and then tightening or loosening them to make it easier to open.
Yeah. And then when you moved to Andrada, what did they do with the doors?
So I sort of asked them to install buttons because they had just built a new wing to the campus that was upstairs, and there were 2 sets of doors going through. And to open those, I can open doors manually if I need to, but to do it twice within a quick time made it really difficult, and the stairs are also right there. So I didn't have a lot of room to work with, so they also got another maintenance order to install buttons on those walls that would open both sets of doors simultaneously. So you press it once, both doors will open and I can get to class. But the buttons had not yet been installed because it was a new building. Why they weren't installed with the building is beyond me, but we did get that in place.
Because we didn't have a trendsetter come right away like you.
I guess so.
Yep, yep. So those are things that you got to think of, and things that a lot of people don't necessarily think of. Debbie was talking about going to Rome earlier and talking about going to Pompeii. You don't think about those things having the cobblestone until you're there, until you're experiencing it. And Sam has really done such an amazing job advocating for himself throughout, and being kind and gracious when that happens. Because I can tell you, just about anybody wanted to help Sam and figure out what he needed at that time. So,
Mm.
all right, modifications and accommodations. So modifications versus accommodations. I found this little chart and it really helps explain things. So accommodations in kind of the Cliff Notes version is you're not changing the curriculum. You're not changing how anything is. You're just helping the student get to that part. So you're helping the students with the same material, the same curriculum, the same grading expectation. You're just changing the environment. If you have a student who has who might have ADHD and they struggle with staying on track and tracking things, cutting a paper in half and having them read it one line at a time might help. And it might help some of your students too on that. So not changing anything but the environment, using audiobooks, using text to talk to text. I saw this AI program that I've been looking up. I heard it on a podcast, and they take teachers' notes, and whether it's notes that they have posted online or slides that they've posted online, presentation slides, and they put them into study guides, and they put them into little note cards that you can test yourself. And so this is just a really great time in technology. I know a lot of people hate AI, but it's such a great time in technology to support students and to help out. So all of those things are accommodations. Being able to leave 5 minutes early is an accommodation. Being able to go to the nurse's office because it's a bigger bathroom is an accommodation. You have very much the right to ask for all of those things. Modifications. This is where the curriculum changes, the expectation changes. So if the teacher is asking for a 5-page essay and you have a modification of a 3-page essay or a 2-page essay and breaking it down that way, those are modifications. You're changing the things. Or it's a 20-question math test. You want them to do all of the evens instead of all of them, all 20. That's a modification. It's still there. They're still going to get graded on it. They're still doing the curriculum, but it is a modification in the expectation. So yeah, okay. And then the last piece is just our common language in the Vail School District. So this is the school district, their special education. And I just wanted you guys to see it's can be different in every school district. But our common language is our students. We find that when we use that language, it's not your student, it's all of our students. Assume competence. This is a huge one, especially I remember when Sam first came, because Vail Academy was a really small school, especially at the high school level. And so for some of your kids, it just looks different. And so their ability versus what it might look like visibly is so different. And so assuming that they can do it and assuming the competence of it. I remember, Sam, I think it was the first or the second time. I think it was the first time that you and your mom came to visit the school just to walk around. And your mom was telling me that you had won a writing contest. And you had won a computer, and it was pretty amazing. And so when I had told your English teacher initially that she was blown away and she was really excited. And so we always assume that students can do it until they tell us otherwise. Meeting students' needs, putting a button on a door is definitely meeting the needs, and being able to go into the nurse's bathroom, all of those things. Targeted supports. So as surgeries came up and as things just adjusted with Sam, we targeted the support. We had speech come in and not necessarily give services, but just support us as far as some of the progression of it all. And so we just made sure that we were ready for that. And then life skills classroom. So I think we all remember in high school, a hallway or a classroom. And so we have changed the verbiage of that to life skills classroom, and all of our classrooms that service students with different abilities, they're all over our campus. So it's not just one area now. So that is it. I can go into a lot more detail, but I didn't want to go crazy. And so bring on as many questions as you have, and I would be more than happy to answer them.
That was great. Thank you, Shauna. I'm gonna wait because I have a lot, but I want to let others have a chance to ask you a question. And I know, Marissa, did you say you had to leave? You can't stay the whole time? No, okay, sorry. I was imagining that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure if anyone has to go, please, go ahead and ask your questions. Or Sam, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or based on your experience, advice to give for kids or parents?
I mean, if you had any questions for me, I'd be willing to answer. This only covered a lot of what my process was like. There are a lot more details that we could go in, like how, like the types of goals that we did and everything like that. What you could choose as goals, and what other sort of accommodations like I used. So so I sort of advocated for the buttons to get installed as an accommodation, but one of the biggest accommodations that I use was an adaptable desk, which is one that I think a lot of people would like to use. So schools, like Anjana, I remember didn't really go off of tables, similar to how Vail Academy did. They did a lot of the standard desks that had the chairs connected to them. So you can't separate the chair from the desk, which is obviously a problem if you're using a wheelchair. So what schools can provide is a desk without a chair connected to it, and then they can adjust the height based on what you need. So I remember some days, maybe a day before school would start, I would pop in, and then we just then getting all my desks set up in each room. I remember the first day of school, I would stop by all my classrooms to make sure that all the desks were in place, because sometimes they didn't. I remember in some classrooms it would take a while to actually get a desk in there. So it's stuff like that. The desk was probably the biggest one I used, just because they had the really conventional student seating at Indra. And then I also used time extensions. I didn't use that one a ton. Only if I had something like surgery come up. I had already taken half a credit of one of my classes over the summer to get it out of the way, but my IEP and just the teachers alone were really great for when I needed that extra time if I was recovering. So that was really the only time I used that accommodation of a time extension, because other than that, academically, it would be pretty, I would be on time, and nothing would really come up that would hinder me, unless I think senior year in around February, I got an early stage of pneumonia. So that sort of slowed me down a lot. So the teacher
And it's
really,
such a busy year too. So much going on that year.
yeah.
Is
So
that
they,
so? Was that just an IEP, or like, because that wouldn't be covered under a 504, right?
No, so Sam had an IEP. The other thing I was going to talk about is a chronic health plan. And so if you know that you have a surgery coming up, or if you have just a lot of appointments coming up, you have the ability to do a chronic health plan. And when Sam had his surgery, we didn't necessarily have to do that because it was during COVID. So attendance wasn't as critical at that time because we were all online. But if we were in class in everything, we would have done a chronic health plan. And that protects all of the students, whether it's a disability or a specific health issue for a certain amount of time or for an extended amount of time, it protects their attendance. So in the state of Arizona, we have, it's kind of between 11 to 13 days. And so if a student misses 11 to 13 days or a class period at the high school level, so say you have a lot of doctor's appointments and you as mom or dad try and schedule them at the end of the day, but you still need to pull them out at least 10 minutes before the school day ends. If they miss 10 minutes or more of a class period, that's considered an absence. And so if you know that you have a lot of that, I would strongly suggest a chronic health plan, and that protects their credit. And because in the way that we do it at Entrada, but also the state, is the school has every right, even if you have an IEP or a 504, has every right to hold that credit, even if they have an A. So make sure that you do that chronic health if that's going to be the case too.
Does anybody else have questions? I'll keep asking, but everyone please interrupt me because I want to share. But so Sam, I'm curious if you had to do anything different. Like, did you have to have an elevator pass or do anything to, like, because of travel time between classes? Was there anything specific you had to have permission or, you know, some plan set up?
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, so just to set the timeline here, I went to two high schools. One was Vail Academy in high school, which was a smaller school. Like I mentioned before, it was a fairly open campus. So there weren't really any hallways. It was all sort of outdoors based. So there was only one level because everything was spread out to the ground as opposed to being in one building. Andrada was sort of more of a what you would imagine a high school. It was 2 stories. I know with the elevator, students typically weren't allowed to use it, but they never had a key or anything that I had to carry around. I know that might be the case in some high schools. They do have keys for elevators to pass, but in Java, the elevator was fairly open. It's just that it wasn't open just to student use. But for me, obviously, they're not going to say no for the elevator. And also, if there's a student who is on crutches or something like that, they also get a pass to the elevator. So I don't think it was ever written. No, no, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it was ever written in my IEP to have elevator access because you're not really going to say no to that anyway. So in terms of the elevator, and then is that what you're asking about? Elevator access?
Yeah, and then the other one, I guess, I don't know, I know that like travel time between classes, that's one challenge with Maggie. I was like, she is trying to use the elevator, but then that also takes longer. And so then she doesn't want to get tardy. But that is in her, so she actually has a 504, not an IEP. But
So
that
yes,
is there. But I was just curious how, like, I don't know, I think there's you know, like you had mentioned, Shauna, about relationships versus the law. So I think that's really important because sometimes I'm like, well, I know that's the law, but you also have to, you're with, you know, the teachers and the principal, and you know, I don't want to be the overly demanding parent, but like I also just think that they're the practical things too. So I guess I'm curious too, how does it work to get from one class to another when it might take you longer? Would you leave earlier, or would you, or maybe you didn't have trouble getting between them? I'm not sure.
yeah, so the big one, a lot of my classes, apart from one, my schedule for both of my years at Entrada worked out fairly well. So we would have a sort of a break period called math time, which is sort of like a study hall. So I would have classes all on the first floor. That study hall would happen, and then the rest of my classes, up until lunch, will be on the second floor. So I kind of had that buffer of time to where I had that study hall for me to leave. And I kind of worked out both years, but lunch is when everyone's sort of in a rush. And since my fourth period, just right before lunch, my fourth period will let me out about, I would always time it exactly 5 minutes early to get to lunch because the hallways just get very rushed and very cramped around that time. And for me, I'm in a big 500-pound wheelchair. I can sort of muscle my way through if I need to sometimes. But usually that time was only every day I will leave early was because lunch, just because everyone's leaving at the same time and everyone's rushed. And I also do the like a protein shake. So it gave me time to do that as well. Just to get my drink and then head down and have my lunch. So just before lunch, that's when I used to leave early. And then also something really neat that you might also want to consider for fire drills. Um, every fire drill that happened at Andrada would be in that fourth period class. So, and my third period would be downstairs. So what they would do, they would actually tell me in advance that there's going to be a fire drill. And I would actually, and the fire drill will happen maybe 15 minutes after the fourth period bell. So what I would do, I would just hang out in my third period for those 15 minutes. That way I wasn't going up the elevator, get settled, and then have to go all the way back down. So every time there's a fire drill, I was actually noticed in advance. So I could stay downstairs and not have to up, down the whole time.
Well, so I
We
want to
never
ask
had you
this,
practice
so-
what happens if you were
Oh, okay.
upstairs.
I think Bruce
my
and I were on the same
God.
track. Like, yeah, do you feel like if there had been a fire, there was a good plan for you to get out safely?
I believe so. I mean, there's the fourth floor, but it's either elevator for stairs. So if there's a fire, I'm catching a ride on someone's shoulders.
Okay.
So
What,
that's what's gonna happen. But we did have a good plan in case there was a fire that happened in the upstairs. I needed to get downstairs quickly. Cause one of my teachers did tell me he used to be a drill in a prison, and he would watch over prisoners during fire drills. And he would tell me that what happens after you pull the fire alarm, the elevator is reset to the bottom floor as a safety precaution. Now I don't know if Andradas did that, but it also does show if you're on the second floor and the alarm gets pulled, there's a good chance that the elevator will stay at the first floor by default and not come back up. So
maybe this is a good message that we should figure out what because I think it is wonderful to not have you do something unnecessary that is challenging, but I will tell you it did freak me out a little bit because we met with Maggie's principal, and after that he was telling some other story and then told us a story about how kids were in an elevator during a power outage. And I was like, okay, you're talking about this story of and my daughter uses the elevator. So yes, let's all please make sure our children, or we will get out safely if
yeah, there was always a plan. I would talk to multiple people in the STEM department, multiple people like my case manager and everything. For coordinating what would be a good time when to leave class early, and also stuff like the fire drill, which I do actually highly recommend bringing up with your teacher if there's going to be a fire drill when you're on the second floor, just to hang out onto that bottom floor for those 15 minutes. And then go back upstairs and resume as normal. That was by far something that I really liked that Andrada did for those fire drills. So I do highly recommend that method.
So Shauna, I'm just curious if you could just talk, so you told us about IEP and 504s, and I'm just wondering, especially if you think about orthopedic impairment, or I guess whatever would qualify someone with FSHD, and you know about FSHD, I'm wondering what we should think about specifically with the symptoms they have, about what to put in either one, or what you had mentioned, like it sounded like start with a 504 if it's, you know, newly diagnosed milder symptoms. And so I guess advice specifically about those who have FSHD, and then also, you know, any disadvantages of one or over the other. So how do we decide which one and what to put in them, I
Navigate,
guess?
right? So I think the biggest piece is just seeing what your needs are. If it's just accommodations and it is just a few things like leaving the class like 2 to 3 minutes earlier, getting a heads up on fire drills and things like that, something that changes the physical environment, whether it is being able to even like say the test verbally instead of writing, because fine motor skills is a struggle at this moment. The smaller accommodations would work just fine for 504s when you're changing the curriculum, because writing, typing, or verbalizing from text to or speech to text is too much, and just really exhausting and taxing, and you need to change the curriculum, that would be appropriate for a 504 or for an IEP. When you're looking at transition for just after high school, and when you're looking at jobs and skills, all of those things, and just kind of abilities, an IEP is very appropriate as well.
And so, and that was actually one question a parent had asked on the Facebook page, that an IEP would work for college. No, okay. So what do you do? Okay, Marissa or anybody, what do you do once you get past high school?
So once you get past
Oh,
high school,
sorry, it was the 504 that's past.
the 504 moves into the university level. So if you have an IEP at the high school level and you graduate, you go to the student service center of whatever college, technical school that you are going to, and you say, these are the accommodations that we were receiving. They cannot give modifications, because colleges are very locked into exactly, if you earn a bachelor's, you're earning a bachelor's just like everybody else who earns a bachelor's. But they can do accommodations. They can be able to take a test at the writing center, or they can help you with just movement and being able to say things verbally, be able to use different apps, but all of that will move into a 504.
Marissa, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because I did work for a little while with the services for students with disabilities at the University of Michigan. So I have a pretty in-depth knowledge of what happens when you go off to college. So I just wanted to, yeah, that same point of like, if you have accommodations in high school, those are not going to automatically transfer over, and you'll have to like arrange a meeting with like a counselor or whatever at the services for students with disabilities office. They're called different things across all colleges and universities, which is why I was having troubles trying to figure out what to call it. And then they'll meet with you, get your documentation, talk about your needs, stuff like that, and then they'll create like an accommodation plan. And I would definitely say that, and they just call them accommodations at the college level, because it's all like, that's the language that's used in the 504 law, I think. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of different stuff. From my experience, they're pretty flexible. They help you work with your professors to figure out like what is needed based on the class, because there's a lot of different, more variety in like the classes you're going to encounter on the college level. So they help you work with your professors and get accommodations. I specifically worked at the testing center. And so it's an opportunity to get creative to figure out what kind of accommodations that you need at the the college level for sure. But you gotta let someone know ahead of time. It's not gonna just transfer over.
Well, I don't think any of this stuff happens automatically. There, like you know,
Yeah.
so
You
that
would be
kind of like goes to
surprised.
one of my other, what?
You'd be surprised how many people we encountered that were like came to the first day of school and were so shocked that their plan from high school didn't transfer over
That
to
they didn't
college.
have to keep advocating for their rights.
Yeah, that they didn't have to like register. We had people coming to the testing center being like, okay, I'm here to take my test. And we're like, who are you?
Yeah.
They weren't like registered with the office or like anything. So you'd be surprised how many people don't think about it.
And
Um,
the other thing is sometimes accommodations will look different at the college level. So, you know, you go and you say, these are the accommodations that I received at the high school level. Some of them, they might not be able to carry over, and some of them just might be written differently. And really that's kind of every environment. So if you were to move from one high school to the other, or one school district to the other, it just looks different to the environment. Accommodations, goals, all of those things just might look a little different.
so I feel, Shauna, do you have time for a few more questions? I don't want to keep you too long, but okay. I feel like I needed like a little quiz because I still have a hard time, like what is a curriculum change and what is it? So let me just see if I'm on track here. So so I get if you need an assignment shortened or, you know, a test shortened, that's changing the curriculum. But turning something in, like having an extra day, is not changing the curriculum, right? So that's technically an environmental change. Okay. And then I think you had mentioned, the one thing that I was trying to sort out is if I do think a lot of people with FSHD, endurance is an issue, and some, you know, especially fine motor. So I know my daughter, you know, will kind of have to switch between writing or typing, and you know, that definitely gets hard. So to do some, to, I guess, for an exam to be like an oral exam, or change the way they give the information, whether it's an assignment or a test, is that changing the curriculum?
Nope, because it's the same.
Okay, okay, I thought you would, because I was thinking if they're still being tested on the same amount and the same topic, that isn't, but maybe I misunderstood something about, so I mean, it does, am I right in thinking that for most of the time for someone with FSHD, it wouldn't really be much of a curriculum change, it would be mostly environmental?
Yeah.
Right, whether it's, you know, when I think environmental, I think of the facility, you know, for Sam, the hinges and um you know, doorknobs or whatever, but it could be things like you know, how they turn in the assignment, or how long. Okay. Okay, so another question I have is, how do you have any advice on how parents can advocate for their child or child themselves? And, you know, you had mentioned the law versus a relationship. And so that kind of brings in like communication too. So if you have any communication advice, I guess maybe especially if, I'll give you my example, you know, like I informed the school of Maggie's diagnosis. I didn't give a lot of information, and I realized that was a mistake, and you know, I needed to give more. So I don't know, any communication tips, you know, or how to advocate would be really helpful.
So I'm sure everybody has heard this, but you know, my grandma used to say, you catch more flies with honey, right?
Yeah.
And but I also used to say to every parent in IEP meetings, especially ones that got pretty heated, especially at first, was, you're your child's greatest advocate. And
Mhm.
so it's a fine balance of advocating for what your child needs versus kind of keeping that relationship with the special education teacher and the school and their general education teachers. You know, the special education teacher might be used to and know extremely passionate parents, but sometimes general education teachers don't. And a lot of times especially at the high school level, they are experts at their curriculum and they are experts at their curriculum. They're not experts and have a lot of experience with sometimes students with disabilities. And you guys are in such a rare category of visibly, it looks different than ability wise. And Sam did such an amazing job of kind of being the spokesperson and the lighthouse for that, because Sam was just so amazing academically and so on top of things. And so, you know, Allie was so great with finding that fine line of advocating, but also being great with the teachers. And I think that part kind of came because she was an educator as well. And so she knew that role, and it's hard as a parent myself. It's hard not going in hot when something happens, or you know, they didn't follow this, or they had a fire drill and they didn't tell my kid and my kid got stuck here for the fire drill. It is really hard to not come in hot on those days. But you just need to find that balance of still advocating, still being your kid's biggest advocate, but having grace and knowing kind of what to fight for and what not to fight for.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's good. Does anybody I have 2 more questions. But does anybody else want a turn? I feel very greedy right now.
I have a
Um,
couple questions. Oh,
yes.
sorry.
Go ahead.
One question is, if a 504 isn't being followed, is there any, because I know it's more of a verbal agreement versus a legal agreement, because,
Mm-mm.
It is, girl, it is a legal document.
oh, good.
And it is part of the 504 Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And so that legal document is your kind of contract saying, you as the school, when we wrote this, you as the teachers said that this is what will support and help my child. I agreed that this is what will support and help my child, and you agreed to do this. So if it is not being followed, then you do have a, you know, legal right. Now, with that said, kind of going back to our conversation of the law versus the relationship, if this is a conversation that has been had multiple times and it's still not being followed, and you've talked to administration and it's still not being followed, then yes, I would get yourself an advocate, and go.
I have, oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to, there's like an echo and I'm trying not to talk over anybody, but I have 2 examples. One is there was a fire drill and she literally fell and got trampled. Like she should have had her wheelchair, but they just continued on with the fire drill, helped her up, and they failed to tell me. She told me, but they failed to tell me. The second issue is I have been trying to get physical therapy through the school several times. The doctor's called, the nurse that works at the doctor's office has called, and it's an issue.
So with the physical therapy, what is the, like, the purpose, and what is your end goal for getting physical therapy in the school?
See, this is where the gray area is, because we know it's not going to obviously help her physically get stronger and so forth. We do know that, but it's more to kind of monitor her, because we see the doctor at the MDA clinic every 6 months, but they're trying to keep up with any accommodations she needs, because she's at the age of 13, and that's kind of the age that everything decides it's going to change. So it's more just to have someone keep their eye on her to say, okay, this is changing and so forth. We did have physical therapy that we thought was going great until my daughter told me they were having her do wall sits and push-ups. So it's hard because everybody, like you said, sees her and, oh, it's great. She's doing great. But they don't see her at the end of the day, and they don't see her when she can't walk because she's overdone it. And so it's that hard. It's very hard. And I've been trying to go with an IEP because I was under the understanding that a 504 was just an agreement between you and the school, and the IEP was legally binded. But she has no educational, or she doesn't need anything besides accommodations. So that's where I've gone back and forth too, because I just feel like at the beginning of the year, everybody's like, yeah, we're going to do this. She needs this. She needs this. I saw this. And by probably 2 months in, things start falling away, and I'll call and I'll remind them, and I'm not getting anywhere.
Do you have all the things that they said that they were going to do in the 504?
We do. We have everything in there.
Yeah, I mean, I would go that route and just say, hey, we discussed this. This is in the 504. This is a legal contract. As far as the OT, so it's hard and it's sticky. When we're talking about outside services and services like speech pathology, OT, PT, it's one of those where does it affect their ability to reach the academic curriculum? And then also, would those services help change and increase ability? And so, like, take my son, for instance. When he was younger, it was almost like his tongue was lazy when he was in preschool and elementary school. But he didn't qualify for speech services within the school because the school could still understand him a little bit, and he was still doing well academically. Now he qualified for speech services outside of school, but they wouldn't qualify him inside the school because it didn't affect his academic ability. I might suggest like PT or OT consult if it's kind of data that you're wanting to track and make sure that she is hitting certain marks. Maybe do like a consult where the OT or the PT comes out every month or every other month, and they have certain things that they look for and go from there.
Thank you. We've tried that. It's been a very difficult battle because of insurance, and so it's been a battle. And the reason through the school they were thinking is because they could see her in the school setting, they could see how she's doing, and it's been a battle. But it's the little things, like even forgetting about the physical therapy. Like if there's a fire drill, that's my daughter's safety. What if it's not a fire drill and they continue to just let kids pretty much walk over her while she's trying to get up? So it's just little things like that I feel like I'm glad that a 504 is legally binded. I did not know that.
So
Thank you
Shauna,
very
would
much.
would something like mobility during a fire drill be appropriate? So I'll mention that. So I'm a PT. I'm not in the schools, but I think when Shauna was talking about the consults, she meant like an occasion, like for a PT to occasionally check in at school. But it really, if you are having a therapist at school, it really is specifically supposed to be so that the child is able to learn at it's very school specific. But I mean, I don't know, like I'm a little obsessed about the fire drill and fire stuff. So, I mean, to me, I think that making sure, like having a PT to make sure someone can mobilize safely out for whether it's like an Alice or whatever lockdown, whatever that any sort of safety thing. Mobility is like I would think mobility is very much linked to that. I do feel like with FSHD maybe there isn't quite as much PT in the school setting need as other things, but
I agree. And, you know, when Sam first came and with every change, like after he came back from his surgery, we had a PT come and just kind of see what Sam could do and where he was at. And then we walked around the school to kind of gauge what changes we needed to make from the last time he was there, and go from there. So it's not it's not locked in stone with the ability, but I would say something about like a maybe PT coming out and making a plan for fire drills or for lockdowns. And I would give that example at the last fire drill because that is very unfortunate that happens. Yeah.
mhm.
Unfortunately,
Okay, so
not
I have
uncommon
one.
too.
Oh, go ahead, Marissa.
Oh, I say that's unfortunately not uncommon too. I've seen so many stories of people, you know, as adults telling their stories of being disabled kids in school, and like there was a fire I was just forgotten about, the active shooter drill I was just forgotten about. Unfortunately, that's not uncommon. But I did want to also say that if you do have that 504 plan in writing with the school and it's not being followed and you've tried and they're just not getting it and they're being difficult about it. Unfortunately, these laws are enforced through like a complaint system. So I would suggest finding your like state or city's like civil rights compliance office and filing a complaint with them. That would probably be if you know you can't fix it yourself, the route that you would need to go. I just wanted to mention that that's always an option for people to get these things enforced.
Well, I like that Sam had a plan. If the adults were not going to help him, he was going to find one of his buddies and I'm going to tell Maggie and make sure you know who you're going to, climb onto to get out. Okay, so my last question is, I feel like, so we talked about curriculum and environment, and I don't know where this falls in, and it maybe not covered, and I'm an emotional person, so this is my thing. Like I have this feeling that like, okay, my kid's life is more challenging than others. I would love teachers or any people to have a little TLC, like, like be understanding. I will tell you that she has in her 504 that she cannot get marked for tardies. And so this is my example. She received a detention for tardies. And so that meant that two people, one person twice made the mistake of giving her a tardy, and then another person made the mistake of giving her a detention. She, cried as I would have and said, well, I have a plan and I, shouldn't have tardies. And he said, well, I mean, this is all resolved now, but it just sort of gets to my, like we have the plans. I just feel like it's different to say like, okay, let's get the hinges fixed. But for me, I think it's harder. And I don't know if you have any advice to like the day to day, like how people see her. And I don't know if it's maybe a little bit harder because she is ambulatory, and while I see her symptoms, maybe, the teachers don't quite as much. But I like totally, I made a list of symptoms and sent it to the teacher, and they were very appreciative because they were like, okay, well, I knew she had FSHD, but it was like, I didn't know what it meant. But I think Sam had mentioned a drama class, and like mostly in high school, you're not running, but in drama class, she had the assignment to chase a boy around the room. She can't run. And right now she's in choir, and she said, I don't know what to do, because she, like, we have exercises like pucker and make this other, like, I can do this other sound with my mouth. And I would think when I say there's oral weakness, or I think I was very specific, but she's thinking my teacher is going to think I'm not doing what she asked me to do. So I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations about these, like, maybe little things, and then also that it's a little bit more of an emotional thing. And maybe this ties into any advice you have for kids, because I'm not going to be there with her when her teacher tells her to pucker in choir class.
So for that emotional piece, even with the teachers, because teachers get into teaching and education because they have that emotional piece. They love the kids. And I think if you were to put together like a video or an informational slide, and send it to the teachers at the beginning of each year and talk about, have pictures of when your kid was little and kind of the progression of it. It's effective. And it's effective to have just a sit down with the teachers before school starts, and say, okay, this is what it looks like. And talk about how difficult it is for them to make facial changes and have any affect. And so, even to the point of, you might think my student is being disrespectful, my child is being disrespectful because they're not ever smiling at you, or they're not ever showing an emotion, but they can't.
Yeah,
And
the emotions are there. It's just the
Ah.
mouth, or it's
just not visible, right? And so even just putting that into perspective for the teachers, it's powerful. And having that sit down, because getting it in an email or getting it in a 504 plan with 20 other 504 plans that teachers get at the beginning of the school year, as much as we as the 504 coordinators would love for the teachers to sit down and just go through every single one, it doesn't always happen. And teachers have a lot going on at the beginning of the school year. And I can tell you that open house is not a great time to try and have a conversation with the teacher, because they've got 50 other parents coming in wanting to talk about their kid. Setting up a time with the principal and with the teachers at the beginning of the school year before things get crazy is a really great time to do that. And just keeping, just doing check-ins with the teachers, and honestly, just making the teachers know that you're still there. And having that, this is really silly, but as a special education teacher, we didn't always get a lot of Christmas presents. All the elementary kids, the teachers got a lot of stuff, and I could name 20 elementary teachers that have cabinets full of coffee mugs. But as a special ed teacher, I never got one. Allie gave me my first coffee mug. And I still remember that, and I still use it, and I still love it, because Allie just did the little things that made all the difference. It didn't take much to love Sam, but having Allie be Sam's mom, and having that fine line of advocating, but also having a great relationship with the teachers helped.
Yeah, they are both wonderful. I have like this tiny, I wasn't going to ask this question, but because you brought up special education teachers again. So my daughter is at a Catholic school. I don't know if like you have any advice for kids who are not in a public school, but I am I guess I don't have experience as a mom with special education teachers because I think maybe our schools don't have one. And so I'm just like, I guess in my head, I'm used to them. I have a friend who helps with children who communicate with sign language. And, you know, of course, children who have cognitive challenges. But I guess, like, I'm not sure, I guess I understand I don't know, maybe you can explain to me how a special education teacher is involved with someone with FSHD, because I think maybe they're just sort of winging it at our school. Just sort of curious.
Yeah. Well, I have to be honest. Sometimes I felt like I was winging it too, and I was very fortunate to have Allie teach me and have Sam teach me and advocate for himself. And that's a huge one, teaching your kid to advocate for themselves as well. Private schools kind of run at a different rules. They don't have to offer special education services because the 504 is a federal law. It's different than IDEA. Even though IDEA is at a federal level, it's within the public school setting. Within the public school setting of getting funded from the states. So it is different. And quite frankly, I think that I think it depends on your 504 coordinators. I think a lot of your guys's kids' needs could be met at the 504 level because most of it is accommodations. I'm going to be pretty frank. The 504 coordinator at the school that we were at was not fantastic. And so I was fortunate that Sam came with an IEP at that time. And so he came onto my caseload. But it's just about advocating and what the needs are. So yes, a 504 definitely could take care of pretty much everything. When you go into academics or you go into accommodations or modifications of shortening an assignment because of the ability to kind of last that long and just being exhausted and exerted, that's definitely different. And I think that now is probably a really great time to start a conversation with your school on, we know that, you know, this is a degenerative disability. And so this is what my daughter looks like now, and this is what her needs are now. But in the future, where are we at? Because we need to start planning for that. And maybe it's not something that we need to put in place now, but we need to start having that conversation now.
Well, I think I definitely need to end this because Allie is going to fire me as a moderator and never let me do it again. But this just shows how much we really needed you and the information you shared. So thank you so much, and for this community, and Sam also for coming and sharing your advice and experience. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you. And
No
Allie,
problem.
go ahead, bud.
No, I was just saying, no problem.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. And Allie knows where to find me. So if you guys have any follow-up questions or concerns, you know, she knows where to find me.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.